Imagine sinking into a darkness so complete it feels like the universe forgot to pay its light bill, down past the last shimmering fish, past the cold that bites like a silent predator, all the way to a world where pressure could crush a submarine like an empty soda can. And yet, life is there. Giant amphipods flexing like deep-sea gym buffs, snailfish so delicate they look like unfinished holograms, microbes partying on chemical fumes, even volcanic chimneys bubbling away like Earth built a hot tub but banned humans from the guest list. There are plastic bags, mysterious underwater sounds that could win Creepiest Noise Award, and geological formations so stressed they look like even the rocks need therapy. But every discovery, every creature, every chemical surprise, every whisper from the abyss points to something bigger, that Earth's strangest life thrives where it absolutely shouldn't, and that worlds far beyond ours might be doing the same. So buckle up, because we're diving into the deepest place on the planet, where nothing should survive, everything astonishes, and curiosity floats even when everything else sinks. Imagine falling, not quickly, not like a dramatic movie plunge, but drifting downward as if the ocean itself is taking its time deciding whether to keep you. The light fades almost politely at first, dimming like someone sliding a dimmer switch in a room filled with blue water. But then the fade becomes a vanishing act. Within minutes, the world around you turns ink black, the kind of darkness that feels like it has mass. It wraps around you with the confidence of something that has been here forever. This is not just deep water. This is the ocean closing the door behind you. And somewhere far below, an entire world waits. A world so hidden that even sunlight gives up on reaching it. Welcome to the descent toward the Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth, a location so intense it makes outer space look like a well-lit convenience store with a friendly cashier. The deeper you sink, the more the ordinary rules of the surface stop applying. Above us, life is loud. Birds cry, waves crash, people complain about their coffee being too hot. Down here, everything becomes silence, absolute and unapologetic. It is the kind of silence that does not simply mean no sound, but something closer to nothing wants to break the peace. Even machines that descend here hum quietly, as if they know they are guests in someone else's house. The water around you grows heavier, thicker, compressing with the patience of a planet that has had 4.5 billion years to perfect its technique. You can almost feel the pressure building long before it becomes dangerous, like the ocean is clearing its throat to remind you who is really in charge. And yet, despite the crushing power of the deep, you cannot help but wonder what lies waiting. Humans are famously terrible at minding their own business, especially when there is a mystery below them. We are the species that touched fire, climbed mountains, poked volcanoes, and looked at the moon and thought, we should stand on that. So when explorers looked at the abyss of the Mariana Trench, of course the reaction was, let's go see what's down there, followed immediately by, I hope it does not explode us like a soda can someone forgot in the freezer. As we descend, the walls of the trench begin to rise on either side, though you cannot see them. They exist in the same way you know a massive creature is nearby, but hidden, real, silent, and waiting. The trench is shaped like a colossal scar carved into the seafloor, a wound created not by violence, but by the slow, grinding patience of tectonic plates. But that's a story for another chapter. Right now, all you need to know is that you are drifting into the lowest point ever measured on the planet, a place so deep that if Mount Everest were dropped inside, its peak would still be surrounded by nearly 2 kilometers of water. This is the kind of statistic that makes you wonder whether the Earth occasionally builds features just to show off. The water temperature drops until it feels like the ocean is quietly refrigerating everything that dares to enter. It is cold in a way that feels personal. Your breath would fog if it could, but down here, even your breath seems to grow quiet. There is no sunlight, no warmth, no comforting blue shimmer, just blackness, thick, endless, and indifferent. But strangely, you feel a sense of anticipation, like you are approaching the entrance to a secret underground theater minutes before the show begins. Everything in your body tells you this place should be empty. It looks like nothing could possibly survive here. But the deep has a habit of surprising us, often by revealing creatures that seem less like animals and more like the universe experimenting with abstract art. Some are delicate, some are monstrous. Some look like they escaped from a child's dream notebook. And the deeper you go, the stranger the cast becomes. Down here, the rules change. Down here, nature writes in a different language. The idea that anything thrives this far beneath the surface is wild enough. But the idea that humans have actually gone down to look more than once is even stranger. Imagine willingly descending into a place where the pressure is so intense it could flatten a steel ball, all because curiosity whispers louder than fear. That is the spirit of deep-sea exploration, a perfect mix of bravery, science, and the subtle suspicion that maybe common sense took the day off. We are approaching a depth where light has never existed naturally, where every discovery feels like eavesdropping on a world that has been living in secret. In a few moments, our journey will take us into the stories of explorers, creatures, machines, and mysteries hidden in the trench. But for now, in this hovering moment between darkness and deeper darkness, take in the silence. Let the weight of the ocean settle around you like a curtain falling before a performance. Because what waits at the bottom is not nothing. It is everything we do not yet understand. And the abyss, patient as ever, has been waiting a very long time for us to look. If the Mariana Trench were a storybook, its opening chapter would begin not with a dramatic plunge into darkness, but with an awkward, extremely slow-motion collision that has been unfolding for tens of millions of years. Picture 2 massive slabs of Earth's crust, each the size of continents, moving with all the urgency of a sleepy turtle. One of them, the Pacific Plate, is steadily creeping toward another, the Philippine Plate. Their meeting is not violent by human standards, but more like 2 stubborn tectonic co-workers refusing to change lanes. And because the rules of geology insist that something has to give, the Pacific Plate begins to sink, sliding beneath the Philippine Plate in what can only be described as the world's slowest elevator ride downwards. This sinking, known as subduction, is not a dramatic plummet. It is more like watching a continent very politely bow out of the conversation and disappear into the mantle. Imagine the Pacific Plate wearing a tiny hat, tipping it silently as it descends into the earth. Gravity doing its best impression of a patient usher. This sinking motion creates a tremendous trench, a long, deep scar etched into the seafloor, stretching thousands of kilometers. The Mariana Trench is simply the deepest part of this grand, ancient gesture, the point where the Pacific Plate dips down at its steepest angle. To understand how this colossal structure forms, you first need to imagine Earth's crust not as a static shell, but as a cracked mosaic of giant pieces floating on top of molten layers. These tectonic plates drift around slowly, too slowly to satisfy anyone hoping for real-time entertainment. But over millions of years, their movements reshape the entire surface of the planet. Oceans open, mountains rise, continents smash together like puzzle pieces that refuse to fit, and trenches sink into the abyss. The Mariana Trench is one of the most dramatic results of this long-term planetary fidgeting. Now, subduction is not just the act of one plate sliding under another. It is also a conveyor belt for transforming Earth's crust into something completely new. As the Pacific Plate sinks, it carries with it sediments, minerals, bits of ancient seafloor, and possibly a few bewildered microbes who definitely did not sign up for this trip. These materials are dragged deep into the mantle, where they encounter temperatures hot enough to make lava blush and pressures strong enough to flatten anything with even the slightest ego. In this intense environment, the subducting plate begins to melt, releasing water and minerals that rise into the mantle wedge above it. This process fuels volcanic activity. Yes, ironically, the act of a plate sinking creates mountains somewhere else. Earth is a deeply dramatic artist that insists on making fireworks wherever possible. In the case of the Mariana region, this volcanic activity forms the Mariana Islands, a graceful arc of land that traces the subduction zone like a necklace marking the edge of a much deeper secret. The trench itself is shaped not just by subduction, but also by the incredible forces stretching, compressing, and bending the sea floor. If you could somehow freeze time and drain the ocean, the trench would appear like a vast, twisted canyon, 1,000 times more ominous when you can actually see the jagged slopes instead of imagining them. Its floor is not a smooth valley, but an uneven, folded landscape shaped by the constant tug of war between plates. Some parts descend gently, others drop off abruptly in intimidating cliff-like formations that would make even the boldest mountain climbers question their life choices. But even as the Pacific Plate sinks, it resists the process just enough to create friction, heat, and stress. These forces ripple outward, causing earthquakes that radiate through the region. Thankfully, most of these happen so deep that we barely notice them, but they serve as reminders that the trench is not a quiet geological museum. It is a living system, constantly shifting and adjusting, even if it does so on a timescale that makes glaciers seem like hyperactive toddlers. One of the strangest things about the Mariana Trench is how perfectly ordinary its creation is, at least by geological standards. Subduction zones exist all around the world, forming trenches in various oceans. But the Mariana Trench just happens to be the deepest because the sinking plate descends more steeply and more efficiently here than anywhere else. Think of it as Earth's overachieving trench, the one that studied extra hard, did all the homework, and made sure it carved itself deeper than all its siblings. Plate tectonics is a slow process, but even slow processes can have favorites. Despite its extreme depth, the trench is relatively narrow, typically only a few dozen kilometers wide. That means the incredible depth forms over a surprisingly small horizontal distance, like nature decided to dig its own private elevator shaft straight through the ocean floor. And while we humans might look at that depth with awe, Earth barely notices. For our planet, carving a trench 11 kilometers deep is simply part of its daily routine, an ongoing, never-ending remodeling project that will continue long after our species has stopped asking questions about it. So as you picture this grand geological ballet, plates drifting, sinking, melting, reshaping, you begin to appreciate just how dramatically the planet moves beneath our feet. And somewhere far below, the Pacific Plate continues its ancient descent, sliding into darkness with the patience of something that has nowhere else to be. It is a quiet journey, slow and steady, but it has shaped one of the most extraordinary features on Earth. And the trench it leaves behind is not merely a hole in the ocean floor. It is the gateway to an entire realm of discovery waiting in the chapters ahead. Descending into the Mariana Trench is not just a journey downward. It is a gradual introduction to the ocean's most ruthless personality traits. The surface ocean is friendly enough. Sunlight, warmth, colors, and fish that look like they were designed by someone who had a decent night's sleep. But the deeper you go, the more the ocean stops trying to impress you. The flamboyant shades of blue fade into a dull twilight, then into a murky soup, and finally into a blackness so absolute it feels like the universe misplaced its stars. Down here, light is not just rare, it is extinct. Darkness becomes a physical presence, settling around you like a heavy curtain that will not lift, no matter how hard your brain tries to convince your eyes to adjust. And this darkness is not merely a lack of illumination. It is a full-scale erasure of color, shape, and comfort. There is no sunrise, no flicker, no glint from above. Even bioluminescent creatures, those tiny, shimmering rebels of the deep, grow scarcer as you descend closer to the trench floor. The blackness becomes a law, and everything that wants to survive must obey. If your flashlight dies here, the darkness does not politely wait for you to turn it back on. It rushes in immediately, swallowing the world in a hunger that feels almost impatient. But the absence of light is only the opening act. As we descend, the temperature sinks faster than your enthusiasm on a Monday morning. The water grows cold with impressive determination, chilling to just above freezing. It hovers around 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, a temperature that politely invites hypothermia to the party, and then refuses to let it leave. The cold here is not a simple discomfort. It is a force that seeps into metal, machinery, and bone with equal indifference. Imagine trying to function inside a refrigerator that has decided to become an overachiever. That is the daily reality of everything living near the trench floor. Still, even the cold and darkness together cannot compete with the trench's most notorious feature, the pressure. The deeper you go, the more the ocean behaves like an over-enthusiastic hugger who does not understand personal space. Every 10 meters of depth adds another layer of pressure, stacking weight upon weight until the ocean is effectively leaning its entire body weight on you, and then calling in reinforcements. By the time you reach the deepest part of the Mariana Trench, the pressure reaches more than 1,000 times what you experience at sea level. That is like having the weight of 50 jumbo jets pressing on a single square meter of space. This is the kind of pressure that does not negotiate. Metal spheres buckle, submarines groan, electronics reconsider their life choices. And humans, without protection, they would not last long enough to regret their decisions. You would not even sink dramatically like in a science fiction movie. You would become, quite efficiently, an instant hydraulic smoothie. No blender required, just the raw power of the deep ocean compressing everything it touches with silent confidence. To put this pressure into perspective, imagine balancing an elephant on your thumbnail. Now imagine that elephant has brought 50 friends, and they are all trying to stand on that same thumbnail at once. Now imagine the elephants are also made of lead for some reason. Congratulations. You now have a mildly exaggerated but emotionally accurate idea of what pressure feels like in the deepest trench on Earth. Down here, even steel behaves like it has trust issues, flexing and shifting under forces strong enough to turn solid materials into anxious ones. What makes the situation even more surreal is that the water itself behaves differently under this kind of pressure. The molecules crowd together, packed tightly enough to make the liquid slightly denser. Sound travels faster. Temperature behaves oddly. Even chemical reactions occur differently because the weight of the ocean forces atoms into a more claustrophobic arrangement. The deep sea becomes a world where the laws of physics are technically still the same, but they perform their duties with a strange, altered rhythm. And yet, despite these absurdly hostile conditions, life does exist here. Not the kind of life that dances through coral reefs or leaps out of the water for dramatic nature documentary shots, but life that has evolved to survive, where survival seems almost impolite. Creatures here are soft, flexible, patient, and unbothered by the fact that they live under pressure so extreme it would flatten almost anything from the surface. But their stories belong to another chapter. For now, we are focusing on the environment itself, which feels less like a habitat and more like a cosmic dare. The trench's combination of cold, darkness, and pressure creates a realm that defies ordinary imagination. Every layer of descent strips away something familiar, first color, then light, then heat, then any reasonable expectations of physical survivability. And yet, the deeper you go, the more irresistible the mystery becomes. Something about this place, this abyss carved by geological forces older than humanity, makes you want to keep going. It proves that even in the most extreme corners of Earth, curiosity still finds a way to breathe, even if humans themselves absolutely could not. So now we have reached a point where the ocean has introduced all three of its most intimidating personality traits: darkness that swallows stars, cold that would make a penguin file complaints, pressure so intense it could crush your dreams along with your rib cage, and yet explorers continue descending, drawn onward not by comfort but by the strange promise hidden in the deep that the world still holds secrets worth sinking for. Long before submersibles, robotic landers, and titanium pressure spheres allowed humans to flirt with the deep sea safely, early explorers faced the Mariana Trench with tools that, by today's standards, look more like props from a pirate ship than scientific equipment. Their mission was simple but wildly ambitious: find out how deep the ocean really goes. Their strategy was less simple: tie heavy weights to ropes, drop them overboard, and hope the rope didn't snap, tangle, or mysteriously vanish into the abyss while they weren't looking. It was a precarious form of science, like trying to measure the height of a skyscraper using dental floss and optimism. In the late 1800s, ships such as the HMS Challenger set out on expeditions that would become the foundation of modern oceanography. The crew used sounding lines, long ropes marked in intervals, with heavy weights attached to the end. They would toss the line into the water and wait for the faintest sign of slack that meant the weight had reached the sea floor. Then they hauled it back up, meter by grueling meter, praying the ocean had not eaten it. There were no cameras, no sonar, no live feeds, just a rope, a weight, and an ocean known for treating human expectations with shrugging indifference. These early explorers were brave, but also slightly reckless, or at least incredibly hopeful. Every time they dropped equipment into deep water, they behaved like parents sending kids off to summer camp. Hope you come back soon, and please, for the love of science, come back in the same number of pieces. Sometimes the ocean cooperated, returning the weights unharmed. Other times the gear returned bent, broken, or crusted with mysterious material that raised more questions than answers. And occasionally the equipment did not return at all, disappearing into the abyss like it had been swallowed by a sea monster who had no interest in participating in peer-reviewed research. One of the biggest challenges for those early scientists was trust. They had to trust the rope, trust the knots, trust the weights, and trust that the ocean floor stayed put long enough to be measured. But the deeper the water, the heavier the rope became, soaking up seawater like a giant soggy python, and threatening to snap under its own weight. At extreme depths, the sounding line bowed under the immense drag and current, creating uncertainty in the measurements. The scientists could only estimate where exactly the weight had landed. It was not perfect, but it was the best humanity had at the time, and it revealed something astonishing. The deepest parts of the ocean were far deeper than anyone expected. As technology improved in the early 1900s, the ocean revealed more of its secrets, but it still refused to make things easy. Echo sounding, an early type of sonar, was eventually developed, sending bursts of sound downward and timing how long they took to bounce back. These methods instantly gave more precise depth readings without needing to fish a rope back from the deep. But before sonar became reliable, explorers were still relying on weighted lines and crude mechanical devices, turning every measurement into a gamble. One of the quirks of early deep-sea exploration was how much of it came down to patience and manual labor. Crew members spent hours hauling ropes by hand in a steady rhythm that must have felt like an endless nautical workout routine. They had to coil massive lengths of line, sort equipment, dry off soaked ropes, and prepare new weights, all while the ship pitched and rolled. It was physically exhausting, but it also created a sense of camaraderie. After all, nothing bonds people quite like performing repetitive tasks while knowing the ocean might be laughing at you. But even as methods improved, the idea of actually descending into deep water remained in the realm of imagination. Until the 1920s and 30s, humans had never entered the deep sea personally. That changed with the invention of the bathysphere, a hollow metal ball barely large enough to hold two people. It had tiny quartz windows, thick steel walls, and enough charm to convince brave scientists that it might possibly not implode. The early bathysphere dives, conducted by William Beebe and Otis Barton, marked humanity's first real attempts to see the deep ocean with their own eyes, for science, curiosity, and maybe a dash of reckless enthusiasm. The bathysphere was lowered on a steel cable, dangling beneath a ship like a bizarre ornament. As it descended, communication consisted of a telephone wire threaded through the lowering cable. The entire setup depended on one hope: that the cable would not snap, and that the ocean would not decide to crush the sphere out of spite. Fortunately for Beebe and Barton, the ocean tolerated their presence, and they returned alive to describe strange, glowing creatures and an underwater world no rope and weight system could ever capture. Their dives did not reach the Mariana Trench, but they opened the door to the possibility of deeper descents. They proved that humans could venture into the deep sea with enough courage, engineering, and carefully managed adrenaline. And their adventures transformed ocean exploration from a rope-based guessing game into a pursuit that would eventually carry humans to the very bottom of the deepest place on Earth. So, while early exploration may seem primitive now, it laid the foundation for everything that followed. Those sounding lines and bathysphere dives were the first steps toward understanding the mysterious abyss. And though the ocean occasionally chewed up equipment or refused to cooperate, the explorers kept returning, determined, persistent, and always a little nervous about whether their gear would resurface in one piece. By 1960, the dream of reaching the deepest place on Earth had evolved from weighted ropes and hopeful measurements into something far more daring, sending two human beings into the abyss itself. This was not a casual stunt. It was not even a particularly sensible one, depending on how you feel about extreme pressure and cramped spaces. But for Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh, the ocean's challenges were not deterrents. They were invitations. And their vessel, the Trieste, was the strangest invitation reply ever built. A hulking, fuel-filled craft topped with a pressure sphere that looked suspiciously like a metal bean pod daring the ocean to blink first, The Trieste did not glide through the water like a sleek submarine. It lumbered, it creaked, it descended with the confidence of a machine that simply refused to acknowledge how impossible its mission truly was. Its upper section was filled with gasoline, not for fuel but for buoyancy, because gasoline is lighter than seawater. Yes, the deepest dive in human history relied on the same substance that powers lawnmowers. That alone should earn the Trieste a medal for audacity. Attached to this floating fuel tank was the heart of the operation, a steel sphere just big enough for 2 men, some instruments, and whatever amount of fear they chose to bring with them. The walls were over 12 centimeters thick, made to withstand pressures that could crush submarines like empty cans. Inside, the space was so small Picard and Walsh had to maneuver carefully just to avoid elbowing each other. If you have ever sat inside a coat closet with another human and thought, "This feels a bit tight," imagine doing it several miles under the ocean, while the water outside compresses the hull with silent, relentless force. On January 23, 1960, the Trieste began its descent into the Challenger Deep. At first, the dive felt almost peaceful. Sunlight filtered down through the water, illuminating the craft in shimmering beams. Fish swam lazily past, normal fish, unsuspecting, living their daily routines without any idea that history was sinking past them. But soon the light dimmed. The water grew colder. The world outside turned blue, then navy, then black. As they dropped deeper, the Trieste groaned under the increasing pressure, the hull making unsettling noises that Picard later described with remarkable calmness, considering those noises essentially meant the ocean was testing its grip. Several hours into the descent, something unexpected happened. A loud boom echoed through the sphere. The men froze. In any other vehicle, a sound like that would be a signal to leave immediately. Unfortunately, leaving immediately was not an option when you were thousands of meters under the ocean in a steel pearl held together by engineering, courage, and what hopefully was not misplaced confidence. It turned out one of the outer plexiglass windows had cracked, an unnerving reminder that the ocean does not hand out mercy. But the pressure sphere remained intact, and the Trieste continued downward, showing the kind of stubborn bravery normally reserved for explorers, penguins, and malfunctioning printer cartridges. As Picard and Walsh neared the deepest point, the seafloor came into view, but not in the dramatic, swirling way movies portray. Visibility was low, the water was filled with fine sediment, and the Trieste's lights illuminated only a small patch of the desolate bottom. The ground appeared soft, almost like grayish ooze. The men described it as diatomaceous, a word that sounds like it belongs in a geology lecture, or perhaps a spell in a wizard's handbook. What mattered was this: they were seeing a part of Earth no human had ever laid eyes on. And then came the real shock. A creature swam by, a flat white animal resembling a fish. It was not large. It was not monstrous. It did not glow or sprout tentacles or attempt to narrate the dive in a deep, philosophical voice. But its mere presence rewrote assumptions. Scientists had believed that the extreme pressure would make such complex life impossible at these depths. Yet here was a living animal, casually existing at nearly 11 kilometers below the surface, as if the crushing weight of the ocean were no big deal. It was as though nature leaned over their shoulders and whispered, "You still have a lot to learn." They stayed on the bottom for roughly 20 minutes. 20 minutes in which human history touched its deepest point. 20 minutes in which two men, suspended in a glorified steel marble, collected data, observed the sediment, and gazed into the quiet stillness of a world untouched by light. Their instruments recorded the environment, but what they felt, an overwhelming humility in the face of Earth's enormity, could not be captured by gauges or dials. When it was time to ascend, they released ballast and began the slow rise back into the world of sunlight. The journey upward was long, quiet, and soaked in relief. The pressure lessened, the darkness eventually thinned, and after nearly 9 hours they surfaced, alive, triumphant, and undoubtedly stiff from sitting in a sphere smaller than some laundry hampers. The Trieste's mission was a monumental achievement, a moment when human curiosity outmatched fear and technology outmatched pressure. It proved that even the deepest corner of the planet could be reached with enough determination, ingenuity, and willingness to climb into a steel ball that sounded like it was trying to play percussion under stress. This dive did more than break a record. It opened the door to a new era of ocean exploration, one where the bottom of the world was no longer an unreachable idea, but a destination. And though the Trieste has long since retired, the legacy of that metal bean pod lives on, reminding us that the ocean, no matter how daunting, still yields its secrets when courage insists on knocking. When Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh finally reached the seafloor during the Trieste mission, they expected to witness a barren desert of nothingness. At nearly 11 kilometers down, the prevailing scientific belief was simple and confident. No complex animal could possibly survive under pressures so extreme they could squash steel, let alone allow delicate biological tissues to function. Life, according to the textbooks of the time, had depth limits. It had rules. It had boundaries. And the Mariana Trench, especially the Challenger Deep, was supposed to be well beyond the line where life politely bowed out. The ocean, however, is notorious for ignoring human certainty. As the Trieste rested on the seafloor, the sediment beneath it puffing gently like powdered chalk, something moved in the beam of its lights. It was a small, pale, flat-bodied creature that glided across the seafloor with the kind of calmness only an organism that does not care about human expectations can possess. It resembled a flatfish, perhaps a kind of sole or flounder, although the conditions made precise identification impossible. The sighting lasted only a moment, but that moment shook the scientific world harder than a sudden earthquake. Here was an animal with a spine, muscles, and a complex body plan, thriving at pressures that should theoretically reduce such creatures to poorly organized jelly. This lone, unbothered creature drifted through the Trieste's beam like a footnote from another world. And in doing so, it challenged the kind of scientific assumptions that had seemed rock solid up until that point. The official rulebook said, "Fish cannot live at these depths." The fish responded, "Please stop trying to write rulebooks for me." It was a humbling reminder that nature operates on its own terms, and our job is mostly to catch up. The unexpected encounter forced scientists to confront an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe the deep sea was not the empty void they imagined. Maybe it was a theater of life adapted so exquisitely to pressure and darkness that surface creatures would stand no chance trying to copy their strategies. The flat fish-like animal appeared to move normally, not crushed, not distorted, not struggling with physics. It used the soft, silty bottom as though it had spent its entire life there, and it probably had. It was not a visitor. It was a resident, and its home was a place we had considered uninhabitable. Researchers immediately began re-examining their assumptions about extreme depths. If a flat-bodied fish could survive 11 kilometers deep, what did that mean for the limits of biological structure? How did its tissues prevent collapse? How did its enzymes function under crushing pressure? How did its cellular membranes avoid turning rigid? These questions cracked open a field of inquiry that would eventually reveal the astonishing diversity of deep-sea life you will meet in later chapters. But in 1960, these ideas were still revolutionary, like discovering a palm tree growing happily on the slope of Mount Everest. Yet this discovery also came with mystery. Later dives using sophisticated cameras could not conclusively verify the presence of flatfish at such depths. Modern understanding suggests that vertebrate fish cannot survive beyond about 8 kilometers, and that the Trieste's sighting may have been a misinterpretation, possibly a deep-sea holothurian, a type of sea cucumber with a flattened shape, or another invertebrate drifting in the disturbed sediment. But whether it was truly a fish or an extremely unbothered sea cucumber, the impact remained the same. Something alive and recognizable was down there, defying expectations. The creature, whatever its exact identity, ushered in a shift in scientific perspective. Before this moment, researchers often spoke about the deep ocean in terms of scarcity: scarce light, scarce nutrients, scarce oxygen, scarce life. But the Trieste encounter forced them to consider something new: adaptation. Not survival on the brink, but full biological competence in a realm where humans could not last long enough to even complain about the pressure. Whether or not the animal fit neatly into our categories mattered less than the fact that it existed at all. And if there was one such creature, there might be others. Life, after all, does not sprinkle itself randomly. It tends to arrive in clusters, ecosystems, patterns. The ocean does not create a single, lonely species living in complete isolation. It builds networks, predators, scavengers, decomposers, symbiotic partners, woven together across time. The Trieste sighting hinted that the deepest trenches might hold not emptiness, but entire communities we had yet to discover. It encouraged the scientific world to imagine a deeper, richer biosphere stretching into the abyss like an invisible tapestry. The presence of such a creature also fired imaginations outside science. If complex animals could survive in the most extreme environments on Earth, what might survive in the hidden oceans of other planets or moons? Europa, Enceladus, and other ocean worlds suddenly looked less hypothetical and more promising. But such cosmic speculation is a story for much later. For now, the point is that one small animal, gliding calmly through a splash of artificial light, expanded our understanding of what life could be. Picard later described the sighting with a sense of quiet awe, and who could blame him? Imagine sitting in a cramped metal sphere, 9 hours into a mission that had your nerves quoting ancient prayers, only to see a creature behaving like this was just another Tuesday. It was a reminder that the deep sea does not exist to impress us. It does what it does, and it does so magnificently, whether or not we are there to witness it. In the end, that passing moment in the Trieste spotlight became one of the most famous blink-and-you-miss-it encounters in exploration history. A humble creature drifted across the seafloor and changed the direction of deep-sea science, not by performing any grand feats, but by simply existing where it was not supposed to be. And with that, the ocean gently shredded another page of the rulebook we keep trying to write for it. When James Cameron announced that he planned to dive solo to the deepest point on Earth, most people reacted with some combination of admiration, excitement, and the subtle suspicion that maybe the man behind a series of blockbuster films had finally taken method research a little too seriously. But Cameron was not chasing a story pitch. He was chasing the bottom of the world. While other directors might decompress after a long shoot by going on vacation, Cameron looked at a map, pointed at a trench nearly 11 kilometers deep, and essentially took the world's deepest detour to avoid Hollywood traffic. The vessel that carried him there, the Deep-Sea Challenger, was unlike anything that had come before it. If the Trieste was a metal bean pod, the Deep-Sea Challenger was a neon green torpedo with ambition. It stood vertically, long and slender, a bright pillar designed to slip through the water like it had someplace important to be. Which, to be fair, it did. It needed to reach the Challenger deep and return safely while holding not just one human being, but an entire suite of scientific instruments and high-definition cameras. The whole craft shimmered in an almost comical shade of green, as though someone had decided that if humanity was going to send a submersible into the abyss, it might as well look like a glow stick that had fallen off a rave boat. Cameron collaborated with engineers, material scientists, oceanographers, and more specialists than you could realistically fit into a conference room without needing assigned seating charts. Together, they built a machine that pushed the limits of design, especially the pilot sphere nestled at the bottom of the craft. This cocoon, made of thick steel and barely large enough for a single person, became Cameron's temporary living room, workplace, and existential contemplation chamber. If you have ever tried to sit in the back seat of a compact car and thought, "There's not a lot of leg room here," imagine that feeling, but with the quiet knowledge that the ocean outside could crush a submarine like a tin can if it felt cranky that day. On March 26, 2012, Cameron climbed into the Deep-Sea Challenger before dawn. The sky was still dark, the surface waters gently rolling, the world above completely unaware that history was about to unfold beneath it. As the submersible began its descent, the sunlight faded quickly. The green shell vanished into the gloom until even the support crew could no longer track it. Cameron sat alone in his pressure sphere, watching the monitors as the numbers ticked downward. 1,000 meters, 2,000, 3,000. The water around him grew darker and colder, and the sub drifted through a world most humans will never witness firsthand. The deep-sea Challenger descended at remarkable speed compared to earlier missions, its vertical orientation reducing drag. Still, the dive took nearly 2.5 hours, an oddly peaceful journey, Cameron later said, like sinking through the layers of an alien sky. The deeper he went, the stranger the environment became. At certain depths, tiny organisms drifted past the viewports, glowing faintly like misplaced stars. The pressure outside mounted to unimaginable extremes, but the sphere held firm, performing its job with silent, steel determination. Finally, the sub settled gently onto the sea floor of the Challenger Deep. The pilot sphere's floodlights pierced the darkness, illuminating a flat, pale landscape. The ground looked soft, powdery, almost like the surface of another planet. Cameron observed subtle ripples etched into the sediment, signs that currents continued to shape this remote environment despite the crushing conditions. The silence around him was absolute, the kind of quiet humans almost never encounter, a stillness that made even the faint hum of machinery seem oddly loud. Unlike the Trieste mission, Cameron had modern imaging equipment with him, capable of capturing the environment in high definition. He filmed the terrain meticulously, examining rock fragments and sediment structure. He also deployed sampling equipment to collect material from the seafloor, gathering data that scientists would later analyze for insights into geology and microbial life. The dive was not simply an adventure. It was a scientific expedition with real contributions to deep-sea research. Cameron's cameras even recorded tiny organisms drifting through the water, evidence that life persisted in this extreme environment, adapting in ways humans were still struggling to comprehend. Yet even amid the serious scientific work, there was something surreal about one person, just one, sitting at the deepest place on Earth. Cameron described a sense of profound isolation, not frightening but humbling. It was the solitude of being the only human in a realm that had existed untouched for millions of years. No other voices, no other movement, just the quiet pulse of the planet continuing as it always had. After a few hours of exploration, it was time to return to the surface. Cameron released the steel weights that anchored the sub to the bottom, and the deep-sea Challenger began its ascent. The return journey was faster, but equally introspective. As he rose through the darkness, passing through layers of ocean stacked like invisible curtains, he reflected on the strange privilege of what he had just experienced. When he finally breached the surface, sunlight flooded the cockpit. The support crew cheered, and Cameron, having traveled deeper alone than any human before him, climbed out looking surprisingly calm for someone who had spent the morning in a pressure sphere shaped like a minimalist elevator. His dive marked a turning point. It showed that deep-sea exploration was not limited to specialized government missions. It could be driven by curiosity, private innovation, and a willingness to step far outside the bounds of normal human experience. The bright green submersible proved that exploration still had a place in the 21st century, not just in space, but in the enormous, unexplored terrain beneath our feet. And so James Cameron returned to the surface not just as a filmmaker, but as an explorer in the classic sense, someone who sought out the unknown simply because it was there, someone who, when faced with traffic congestion in Los Angeles, decided the best solution was to take a quick 11-kilometer detour straight down. As humanity sought to uncover the secrets of the deepest trenches, a realization slowly dawned. Sending people down there is impressive, inspirational, and occasionally good for Oscar-winning documentaries, but it is not exactly efficient. Deep-sea exploration requires time, repetition, and equipment that does not mind being squeezed by pressures that could turn a family sedan into geological confetti. Enter the heroes of modern abyssal research, robotic explorers and autonomous landers, machines that possess sturdier nerves than most people in group chats and infinitely more patience. These mechanical ambassadors have taken over the majority of deep trench expeditions, becoming the go-to method for probing environments humans cannot safely reach on a regular basis. They do not complain. They do not need snacks. They do not panic when a wall of black water presses against them with enough force to make steel reconsider its career choices. They simply descend, observe, record, collect, and resurface with the calm professionalism of employees who never check the clock. Modern landers are marvels of engineering, resembling a strange hybrid of a lunar probe and a deep-sea vending machine. Each lander is built around a frame designed to withstand the crushing pressure of the abyss. Instead of relying on thick steel spheres shaped for humans, robotic systems often use pressure-resistant housings filled with incompressible fluid or oil. Electronics are sealed inside these compartments, floating in fluid that acts like a protective cushion, preventing the delicate circuits from being flattened into abstract art. Imagine your laptop encased inside a container filled with incompressible silicone oil and wrapped in a pressure-tolerant shell. Now imagine dropping it 11 kilometers into the ocean and expecting it to turn on afterward. That is essentially what engineers have accomplished. Deep-sea robots endure conditions that would make even the bravest submariner quietly draft their will. Then come the autonomous landers, those patient, silent devices that sink to the seafloor with exquisite dignity. They are equipped with ballast weights that allow them to descend steadily, guided not by remote pilot, but by pre-programmed instructions. Once they reach the trench floor, they conduct their tasks, sampling water, filming the landscape, collecting sediment cores, measuring temperature, recording chemical signatures, and occasionally capturing footage of creatures that look like they escaped from nature's experimental folder. When their job is done, the landers release their ballast, become buoyant, and rise back toward the surface. The ascent can take hours, but the machines do not mind. They simply float upward through the darkness, steady and unbothered, while humans on the support vessel wait eagerly for their return, like anxious parents watching for their kids to come home after a night out, hoping they bring back good stories and no unexpected damage. One of the most advanced systems in use today is the Hybrid Remotely Operated Vehicle, or HROV, which can switch between piloted and autonomous modes. These vehicles combine the precision of a remotely operated mechanical hand with the independence of a robot that can think for itself. In shallow water, they are tethered to a ship by a cable. In deep water, the cable would snap under pressure or weight, so the vehicle detaches and continues autonomously. It is essentially a submarine with a personality split between obedient worker and adventurous explorer. To survive the depth, these robots rely on materials not commonly found in your local hardware store. Some use ceramic spheres, others use syntactic foam, a lightweight but ultra-strong composite filled with billions of tiny hollow glass microspheres. Imagine a building material made from microscopic glass bubbles suspended in resin. It sounds fragile, but in practice, syntactic foam is so pressure-resistant that it has become the gold standard for deep-sea buoyancy. If steel is the muscle of deep-sea robotics, syntactic foam is the bone structure that keeps everything in place. Then there are the cameras. Oh, the cameras. High definition, low light, pressure-proof devices capable of capturing scenes that no human eye has ever witnessed directly. These cameras have shown us ghostly amphipods drifting like underwater confetti, bizarre snailfish fluttering in slow motion, and the strange choreography of currents sweeping across the trench floor. They bring back images so hauntingly quiet that even watching them on a screen makes you feel as though you should whisper. One of the great advantages of robotic systems is their lack of fear. A human descending into the abyss carries the awareness of danger, the claustrophobia, the pressure, the dark. Robots carry none of this. They are the perfect deep-sea workers, always focused, never stressed, utterly incapable of worrying about whether the ocean likes them. They do not flinch when something bumps into them in the dark. They do not second-guess their life choices. They do not need motivational speeches. If anything, humans are the emotional ones in this partnership, anxiously tracking the robot's signals, cheering when it reaches the bottom, and holding their breath when it begins the ascent. The growing sophistication of robotics has also opened up new possibilities for science. With landers and autonomous vehicles, researchers can run long-term observational experiments, leaving equipment on the seafloor for months or years. They can track chemical changes, record deep-sea quakes, and watch how creatures interact with their environment without human interference. In essence, robots allow the trench to tell its story at its own pace. And perhaps the most poetic part of robotic exploration is this: while humans may never live comfortably in the abyss, our machines can. They endure the pressure, the cold, the darkness, and return with messages from the deep. They are the emissaries we send into the underworld, and unlike most mythological heroes, they usually come back intact. So as the age of deep exploration continues, the quiet, unflappable robots push farther into the unknown, mapping, filming, sampling, discovering, without ever losing their composure. If only people in group chats were as chill under pressure. When robotic landers first dipped their cameras into the deepest trenches, scientists expected to see tiny creatures, microscopic drifters, maybe a few small scavengers, the biological equivalent of polite whispers at the edge of existence. They did not expect to see amphipods the size of small bananas strolling casually across the sea floor, like they owned the place. These oversized crustaceans, technically known as supergiant amphipods, were the trench's way of reminding humanity that the deep sea does not do ordinary. These creatures were, quite simply, the shrimp equivalent of hitting the gym for 100 million years. Amphipods, in general, are small, shrimp-like scavengers found throughout the oceans. Most live modest, unassuming lives. You might even call them humble. But in the abyssal trenches, some species develop an unexpected enthusiasm for growth. Instead of remaining dainty little swimmers, they bulk up to lengths of more than 30 centimeters, large enough that if one crawled across your foot, you would probably reconsider your relationship with seafood forever. Their discovery stunned researchers. Giantism in the deep sea was known, of course. Giant squid, giant isopods, giant tube worms. But amphipods? Amphipods were supposed to be the background characters of marine ecosystems, the extras in nature's underwater films. Yet here they were at the trench bottom, puffed up, gleaming, and looking like they were preparing for an interspecies bodybuilding competition. The question, naturally, was why? What was it about the deep trenches that encouraged amphipods to grow far larger than their shallow water cousins? The answer lay in a combination of physics, chemistry, and the strange, slow-motion ecology of the deep. First, there is the phenomenon of deep-sea gigantism, a pattern where some organisms grow larger at extreme depths. Temperature is a major factor. The near-freezing conditions of the deep ocean dramatically slow metabolism. In cold environments, larger bodies are more efficient at conserving energy, like biological thermoses designed to hold on to every calorie. A small amphipod loses heat quickly. A big one retains it. So over evolutionary time, the larger individuals survived better and passed on their genes, leading to a population of supersized scavengers. But temperature alone does not tell the whole story. The deep trenches also present a curious challenge: scarce but high-quality food. Most of the nutrients that reach the trench floor fall from above: dead fish, decaying plankton, chunks of organic matter raining down like a grim, slow buffet. When such food arrives, competition is fierce. A larger amphipod can store more energy, swim farther, move faster, and fight harder for the choicest scraps. In an environment where meals are unpredictable and portions irregular, size becomes its own survival strategy. Pressure plays its part too. The immense force exerted by the deep ocean changes everything from chemical reactions to protein structure. Amphipods have adapted by developing specialized molecules, like pressure-resistant enzymes and flexible cell membranes, that not only allow survival, but sometimes enable unexpected growth. Under crushing pressure, some biological processes become more stable at larger scales. It is as if nature quietly encourages certain species to supersize themselves when they move into the trenches. There is also a chemical twist to their story. These supergiant amphipods have been found to contain unusually high levels of a compound called silloinositol, rare in most crustaceans, but abundant in these deep-dwelling giants. Scientists suspect it may help stabilize proteins under pressure, protecting their cells from collapsing. That would make silo-inositol something like a chemical personal trainer, helping amphipods bulk up without falling apart. Their appearance surprised scientists not only because of their size, but because of their elegance. For giant scavengers, they move with delicate grace, waving long antennae like underwater ballet dancers who happen to have the musculature of a linebacker. Watching them drift into the lights of a deep-sea lander is mesmerizing. They swim with gentle pulses of their pleopods, tiny, rhythmic movements that seem too dainty for creatures that could easily be mistaken for prop monsters in a low-budget science fiction movie. These amphipods also play a vital ecological role. They are the recyclers of the deep, the decomposers, the cleanup crew that transforms dead organic matter into nutrients that support microbial communities and other trench-dwelling species. Without them, much of the trench food web would starve. Their oversized bodies mean they can eat more, travel farther, and transport nutrients across greater distances. In many ways, the trench ecosystem depends on their size. Yet for all their biological importance, there is something undeniably charming about them. They wander through the deepest place on Earth unfazed by pressure, darkness, and cold, conditions that would crush most life instantly. They do not hide. They do not appear stressed. They float in clusters, nibbling at baited traps, cruising past cameras with the confidence of animals that have never been told they are supposed to be small. If they could talk, they might say, "Rules? What rules?" Their discovery also reminded scientists that the deep ocean is still a frontier of surprises. For all our technology and theory, the trenches continue to reveal creatures that seem to rewrite basic assumptions. Each amphipod caught on camera was a tiny exoskeletal ambassador from a realm that refuses to be predictable. Perhaps the most delightful part of their story is that these creatures represent evolution's playful side. In the quiet, crushing dark, where everything seems harsh and severe, the amphipods grew large, graceful, and oddly charismatic. They turned adversity into opportunity, transforming themselves into giants in a world that most life avoids entirely. So when scientists describe them as the shrimp equivalent of hitting the gym for 100 million years, it is not just a joke, it is a tribute. These creatures are veterans of pressure, masters of cold, rulers of the abyssal buffet, and proof that the deep sea always has a few astonishing secrets waiting just beyond the next beam of light. When scientists first spotted snailfish lingering casually in depths that would crush most animals into abstract sculptures, the reaction was a mixture of awe, confusion, and the scientific equivalent of, "How are you even alive right now?" These ghostly creatures were found thriving more than 8 kilometers below the surface, far deeper than anyone expected vertebrates to exist. They floated through the trench like delicate apparitions, soft-bodied, translucent, and shaped in a way that made them look like someone tried to render a fish but forgot to finish the texture pack. Snailfish are not new to science. Many species live in shallow waters and look more or less like regular fish, albeit on the squishier side. But their deep-living cousins, the ones haunting the ocean's hadal zones, are another story entirely. These trench snailfish have bodies so fragile, so gel-like, that lifting one out of the water would reduce it to a disappointing puddle. They survive because they are engineered by evolution's patient and slightly chaotic hand to be soft in a place where softness is a superpower. At extreme depths, traditional fish anatomy becomes a liability. Bones risk collapsing. Swim bladders implode. Tissues stiffen under pressure like clay left out in the sun, but snailfish have discovered the loophole. Avoid rigidity at all costs. Their bones are barely bones at all, more like suggestions of bones. Their muscles are thin, their cartilage simple, and their skin gelatinous. The whole creature is built like a waterlogged whisper, and that softness allows it to endure incredible pressure without being crushed. They do not resist the ocean's force, they yield to it. Inside their cells, specialized molecules called osmolytes help stabilize proteins that would otherwise buckle under pressure. One compound in particular, trimethylamine oxide, or TMAO, accumulates in their tissues. This molecule acts like a microscopic scaffolding system, keeping their biology functional even when the surrounding water is trying its best to compress everything into submission. Interestingly, the deeper the snailfish species lives, the more TMAO it contains. If you plotted it on a graph, it would resemble a polite but determined staircase into madness. But this clever biochemical adaptation comes with a natural limit. At some depth, TMAO concentration would become so high that the fish's internal chemistry would resemble something from a culinary experiment gone wrong. Scientists hypothesize that snailfish may represent the absolute limit for vertebrate life. Beyond their record depths, the chemistry required for survival simply becomes impossible. Yet within this narrow zone of survival, snailfish seem remarkably untroubled. Observations from deep-sea landers show them calmly swimming around bait, weaving through the gloom like curious spirits. While amphipods dash and swarm with the enthusiasm of underwater raccoons, snailfish move with slow, unhurried motions, as though conserving energy is not just a strategy, but a lifestyle philosophy. Their sensory systems have adapted in equally fascinating ways. In the pitch-black world they inhabit, eyesight becomes less about sharp imagery and more about detecting subtle changes in light. Their skin often appears milky or transparent, revealing internal organs like faint shadows. Their skulls are so thin they might as well be made from tracing paper. But what they lack in visual clarity, they make up for in sensitivity. Their lateral line, a sensory organ running along the body, detects vibrations with extraordinary precision, allowing them to locate prey, competitors, or baited landers from surprising distances. They feed on amphipods, small crustaceans, and other tiny animals unfortunate enough to wander too close. Their mouths may not look intimidating, but their suction-feeding technique is efficient and lightning fast. One moment the prey is drifting innocently, the next it has vanished into a gelatinous blur. Snailfish do not put on dramatic displays. They simply get the job done and glide on, unbothered. One particularly famous example, discovered in the Mariana Trench, became a superstar in the world of marine biology. Videos of this pale, fluttering creature captured the public's imagination. It hovered just above the sediment, its body rippling gently, its fins translucent and petal-like. At first glance, it barely looked real, more like a hologram auditioning for the role of mysterious deep-sea presence in a documentary. Yet its very existence proved that life adapts far more creatively than we tend to assume. The discovery of trench-dwelling snailfish also changed how scientists approach deep-sea exploration. Before these animals were filmed, researchers believed that vertebrates could not survive beyond 8 kilometers. The snailfish politely disproved that theory, floating around the camera as if to say, "You humans underestimate everything." Their presence demonstrated that the deep ocean is not just a graveyard of sunken material, but a functioning ecosystem with predators, prey, and intricate interactions. But perhaps the most captivating aspect of snailfish is what they symbolize. They are quiet reminders that life persists even in the harshest environments, not through brute strength, but through flexibility, subtlety, and an almost meditative softness. They show that survival can look gentle, that thriving can look translucent, that evolution, when given enough time and pressure, will craft life forms stranger and more delicate than anything imagined. So as these jelly-bodied wanderers drift through the deepest valleys of the ocean, they carry with them a message. The universe is full of surprises, and the deep sea has no intention of revealing them all at once. Down in the trenches, where pressure reigns and darkness is eternal, the snailfish float gracefully, a reminder that even in the world's most extreme corners, life still finds room to wiggle. Before the age of deep-sea landers and pressure-hardened submersibles, scientists imagined the deepest trenches as sterile voids, quiet, cold, and entirely devoid of anything resembling life. But as technology improved and we began sampling sediment from the Hadal zone, an astonishing revelation surfaced. The trench floors were not barren. They were teeming with microscopic communities, thriving in conditions that would make normal organisms file formal complaints with whatever cosmic manager is in charge of habitats. These extremophile microbes didn't merely cope with the crushing pressure, intense cold, and complete darkness. They embraced it. Their existence didn't bend the rules of biology. It rewrote the entire instruction manual in tiny, microbial handwriting. These microbes are not flamboyant. They do not glow. They do not swim dramatically across camera frames like trench snailfish or flecks like giant amphipods. Instead, they form invisible empires in the sediments, clinging to minerals, seeping into pores of the sea floor, and living quiet, steadfast lives in an environment that would flatten most known cells into sad biological confetti. Yet in their understated way, they represent one of the most profound scientific discoveries of the deep ocean. Life does not need sunlight, warmth, or comfort. It simply needs chemistry, time, and the stubborn determination of things too small to care about our expectations. One of the secrets behind their resilience lies in their cell membranes. Typical membranes would collapse under high pressure, their structures squeezed until they resembled molecular pancakes. But extremophile microbes modify the fatty acids in their membranes, making them more flexible, more fluid, and more resistant to compression. Where ordinary cells would buckle, these microbes stay supple, like microscopic yogis who have been practicing deep breathing techniques for geological timescales. Their proteins, too, are engineered by evolution to resist distortion. Under enormous pressure, proteins tend to unfold, a catastrophic problem, since unfolded proteins can't do anything useful besides cause stress. But trench microbes produce specialized proteins equipped with tightly packed structures and reinforced bonds. They are molecular bodybuilders, sculpted not for show, but for survival. Even their DNA repair mechanisms are turbocharged, constantly fighting the damage caused by pressure-induced chemical reactions. But the true marvel lies in how these microorganisms obtain energy. Without sunlight, photosynthesis is off the table. Without abundant organic debris, easy meals are rare. Instead, extremophile microbes thrive through chemosynthesis, chemical wizardry that uses molecules like methane, hydrogen, or even ammonia as sources of energy. Some rely on minerals released from subducting tectonic plates. Others tap into the steady drizzle of organic matter sinking from the upper ocean. And some, astonishingly, feast on compounds produced by deep-sea serpentine reactions, a kind of molecular matchmaking between rock and water that releases hydrogen gas into the environment. In this shadowy chemical marketplace, microbes are the ultimate opportunists. They convert energy sources that would be useless to most organisms into thriving colonies. In doing so, they prove that life is not limited to sunlit worlds. It merely needs a gradient, some difference in chemical energy that it can exploit like a tiny biological entrepreneur. One of the most surprising findings came when scientists discovered microbial biofilms coating bits of plastic and debris found at the trench floor. Even deep-sea trash, unfortunately abundant, becomes a substrate for life. The microbes were not picky. They colonized foreign materials with a level of enthusiasm that would make real estate agents proud. To them, a microplastic fragment is just another patch of real estate in an environment where every surface counts. Extremophile microbes also play a crucial role in global nutrient cycling. By processing carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and other elements under extreme conditions, they influence chemical balances that ripple outward into the rest of the ocean. The deep trenches are not isolated pockets. They are dynamic systems where microbial metabolism quietly shapes planetary chemistry. In a sense, the smallest trench inhabitants act as the custodians of Earth's deepest biochemical corridors. Their existence has profound implications for the search for life beyond Earth. If microbes can thrive under 11 kilometers of crushing seawater in perpetual darkness, on a diet consisting entirely of molecules scraped from rocks and recycled detritus, then why couldn't life survive on icy moons with subsurface oceans? Why not on planets with high-pressure atmospheres? Suddenly the universe feels less empty, because if Earth can hide thriving communities in its most extreme corner, then life elsewhere might simply be hiding too, waiting for the right instruments to discover it. Yet for all their cosmic significance, trench microbes remain humbly invisible. They do not seek acknowledgement. They inspire no documentaries. They will never trend on social media. They simply persist, dividing slowly, adjusting chemically, enduring pressures that would make larger organisms reconsider their ambitions. These microscopic beings are, in many ways, the pinnacle of resilience, life stripped down to its essentials, thriving where almost nothing else can. And perhaps that's the most astonishing part. They are not exceptions to biology. They are examples of its full potential. They show that life is not fragile, not confined to gentle habitats, not defined by the comforts we associate with livability. Life is adaptable. Life is stubborn. Life is creative. So while giant amphipods and ghostly snailfish earn the spotlight with their unusual shapes and improbable behaviors, the true champions of the trench might be these microbes, quiet conquerors living in a world of crushing pressure, freezing cold, and eternal darkness, thriving cheerfully in conditions that would cause ordinary organisms to file complaints, grievances, and possibly restraining orders in the deepest, gloomiest corner of the planet. The smallest forms of life remind us just how big life's possibilities really are. When most people imagine the deepest parts of the ocean, they picture frozen stillness, quiet plains of mud, slow-moving creatures, and temperatures so low they could make a penguin consider layering up. But every so often, in the vast emptiness near deep trenches, the Earth decides to surprise us with something spectacular: hydrothermal activity. Yes, even in the coldest, darkest regions of the planet, the crust manages to create pockets of geological enthusiasm. These hydrothermal systems are like hidden spas built by tectonic forces, Earth's idea of a hot tub, but with a strict no humans policy. Though the Mariana Trench itself is not lined with glowing hydrothermal vents, the region around it hosts some astonishing examples. The most famous are the Mariana Arc hydrothermal vents, perched along the volcanic arc that parallels the trench. These vents exist because the Pacific Plate, as it sinks beneath the Philippine Plate, drags water-rich minerals deep into the mantle. When those minerals heat up, the trapped water is released and races back toward the surface, superheated and bursting with chemical potential. It rises through cracks in the sea floor, reacting with the surrounding rock, before erupting as jets of mineral-loaded fluid that can exceed temperatures of 400 degrees Celsius. Now, under normal atmospheric pressure, that kind of heat would produce steam worthy of a locomotive. But in the crushing depths, where pressure reigns supreme, water simply refuses to boil. Instead, it becomes a superheated liquid capable of dissolving metals and minerals like an overachieving potion. When this fluid finally escapes through openings in the crust, it hits the near-freezing seawater and cools rapidly. The dissolved minerals, sulfides, silicates, metals, and more, begin to precipitate out, forming towering structures known as chimneys. These chimneys can grow several meters tall, sometimes forming entire underwater cities of mineral spires. Some are narrow and needle-like, others are thick and twisted like molten sculptures frozen mid-flow. They emit plumes that look like smoke, but are actually tiny particles of mineral debris suspended in hot water. Depending on their composition, they are often called black smokers or white smokers, names that evoke their dramatic appearance, but do little justice to the bizarre beauty of these undersea furnaces. One of the most striking examples in the Mariana region is the Champagne vent field. Instead of the typical dark plumes, these vents release shimmering bubbles of liquid carbon dioxide rising through the water in streams that look almost celebratory, like the seafloor is quietly toasting something. The bubbles refract the surrounding light into dancing distortions, making the scene look unreal, like an underwater hologram. It is one of the few places on Earth where you can watch carbon dioxide emerge directly in liquid form, a phenomenon that sounds more like a laboratory experiment than a natural occurrence. Another site, the Daikoku Seamount, is home to a pool of molten sulfur, a roiling cauldron of bright, glowing material that churns beneath the surface like some mythical brew. This is one of the only known sulfur lakes on the planet, and it sits inside a volcanic crater under enormous pressure. Watching it through robotic cameras feels like peering into the planet's molten heart, a reminder that beneath the calm ocean surface, the Earth is constantly reshaping itself with fire and pressure. But even with temperatures hot enough to cook a crab dinner in seconds, these vents are anything but lifeless. In fact, hydrothermal vents are some of the most biologically productive places in the deep sea. Their existence supports entire ecosystems built not on sunlight, but on chemistry. Instead of photosynthesis, organisms rely on chemosynthesis, the process of converting chemicals like hydrogen sulfide into energy. This makes them some of the most alien ecosystems on Earth, thriving without a single photon of sunlight. The inhabitants of these vent fields range from giant tube worms and vent crabs to microscopic extremophiles that perform chemical acrobatics for a living. Some microbes oxidize sulfur, others consume hydrogen. Some bacteria coat the chimneys in mats so thick they look like plush carpeting, albeit carpeting that would instantly kill anyone who touched it. These organisms form the foundation of vent food webs, passing energy up to larger animals that crowd around the chimneys like patrons at an exclusive, extremely dangerous buffet. What makes these vent communities even more fascinating is their resilience. Despite frequent volcanic eruptions, shifting crust, and unpredictable chemical spikes, life returns quickly. Entire ecosystems can reassemble themselves within years after catastrophic disturbances, an astonishing feat when you consider the difficulty of reaching such remote habitats, let alone thriving there. The study of these vents has revolutionized our understanding of Earth's early life. Some scientists believe primitive life might have originated around hydrothermal vents billions of years ago, feeding on the chemical richness and harnessing gradients of heat and minerals. If so, these shimmering chimneys are not just modern wonders, they are echoes of ancient beginnings, and their existence in deep trenches and subduction zones also suggests tantalizing possibilities for extraterrestrial worlds. If Earth can host hot, chemical-rich oases beneath crushing seawater, why not the oceans of Europa or Enceladus? But for all their biological importance and geochemical intrigue, hydrothermal vents remain unforgiving. Their superheated plumes, unstable chimneys, and acidic fluids create an environment as perilous as it is captivating. Humans can only admire them through armored robots or heavily reinforced submersible windows. Any attempt to dip a toe into this hot tub would result in immediate regret and probably a very short career in oceanography. So while these vents may resemble luxurious underwater spas at first glance, rest assured, they are strictly no humans allowed. They are Earth's private geothermal lounges built for chemistry, magma, and some of the most resilient organisms on the planet. In the darkness of the deep, far from the sun's warmth, they blaze like underwater volcanoes, tiny beacons of life where the planet's inner fire meets the endless cold. For most of human history, the deep sea enjoyed an unearned reputation as a pristine, untouched wilderness, an underwater monastery immune to the clutter and noise of life at the surface. It seemed reasonable enough to assume this. After all, the Mariana Trench is nearly 11 kilometers down, with pressures that could squash steel, temperatures that hover near freezing, and a darkness so complete that even imagination struggles to fill it. Surely, we thought, this was one place our influence couldn't possibly reach. But humanity has a knack for surprising itself, usually in the least flattering ways. When scientists began retrieving samples from the very bottom of the trench, they found plastics, chemicals, and industrial contaminants quietly sitting there, as if humanity had been politely mailing its trash everywhere, even places no postcard has ever reached. One of the earliest wake-up calls came from deep-sea landers sent to sample sediments from the Challenger Deep. When the cores were analyzed, researchers found persistent organic pollutants, compounds with names so long they sound like they come with disclaimers. These pollutants, including polychlorinated biphenyls and flame-retardant chemicals, were once widely used in manufacturing before being banned or heavily restricted. They are also infamously stubborn. They do not degrade easily. Instead, they drift through the environment like rude guests who never received the party's over signal, and somehow, through the slow conveyor belts of ocean currents and sinking debris, they found their way into the planet's deepest valley. Even more unsettling was the discovery that animals living in the Mariana Trench contained measurable concentrations of these pollutants. Amphipods collected from the trench harbored levels of industrial chemicals rivaling or even exceeding those found in some of the most contaminated rivers on Earth. It was as if the creatures had been quietly absorbing the ocean's hand-me-downs for generations, their bodies storing chemical signatures from places they would never see. Each amphipod became a tiny exoskeletal archive of humanity's industrial past. Then came the plastic. If finding chemical contaminants deep in the trench was sobering, the sight of physical plastic debris was downright surreal. Video footage from submersibles captured objects resting on the seafloor, shapes unmistakably human-made. In some cases, researchers identified plastic bags or fragments of packaging material slowly disintegrating into ever smaller pieces. Microplastics, tiny particles shed from broken down debris, fibers from clothing, and countless other sources, turned up in sediment samples as well, indicating that the trench was not just collecting plastic, it was accumulating it. How does plastic travel 11 kilometers downward? Gravity helps, but it is not the whole story. Plastic drifts, breaks, sinks, floats, and hitchhikes. It clings to organic matter that later sinks. It becomes trapped in swirling currents that eventually deposited in deep basins. Even lightweight plastics, which seem destined to remain on the surface, eventually become coated in algae or microbes, gaining enough density to descend. The ocean is vast, patient, and connected. Given enough time, even the most remote locations become downstream from human activity. The discovery forced scientists to confront an uncomfortable truth. There is no such thing as away when we throw something away. The planet is a closed loop, and the ocean, despite its depth, does not forget. Yet the trench does not simply collect visible debris. It also fosters chemical reactions that transform pollutants into new forms. Some industrial compounds latch on to sediment particles, lingering for decades or centuries. Others are absorbed into the fatty tissues of deep-sea organisms, working their way through the food chain in ways we barely understand. The deep sea, once thought to be untouched, turned out to be a chemical diary recording everything humans have produced, discarded, or spilled. One of the more startling revelations came from the study of microplastic ingestion. Amphipods and other scavengers were found with tiny fibers and fragments inside their digestive systems. In some cases, these particles were smaller than grains of sand. The animals did not eat plastics because they mistook them for food. They ate plastics because the deep sea leaves them no choice. In an environment of perpetual scarcity, the line between edible and inedible becomes thin. Organic detritus, after falling through kilometers of water, often looks very similar to plastic once it reaches the bottom. A creature without vision, relying on chemical cues alone, cannot afford to be picky. The presence of contaminants at the trench floor has also raised questions about long-term impacts. Will these pollutants alter the delicate biochemistry of deep-sea organisms? Will they change the structure of microbial communities in the sediment? Will they alter nutrient cycling? We do not yet know. Much of the Hadal zone remains unstudied, and the deep sea keeps its secrets guarded behind dense pressure, low temperatures, and logistical challenges that make sustained research incredibly difficult. But what we do know is enough to signal caution. Ironically, the discovery of pollution in the trench has brought a renewed sense of responsibility to ocean science. The idea that the deepest place on Earth, a location once symbolizing untouched nature, now carries humanity's fingerprints, has sparked conversations about conservation, waste management, and the unseen pathways our trash takes. It has also inspired new technologies aimed at reducing plastic waste and tracking its movement through the marine environment. But perhaps the most humbling part of this revelation is its symbolism. The trench is a natural wonder, a geological masterpiece carved over millions of years. It holds species that defy logic, chemistry that challenges assumptions, and mysteries still waiting to be uncovered. And even there, at a depth so profound that sunlight has never visited, humanity has left a trace of itself, not a monument, not a flag, just garbage. In a strange way, this makes the trench more connected to us than ever before. It is a reminder that the ocean is not separate from our lives. It receives everything we release into the world, from carbon and chemicals to plastic wrappers and forgotten fishing lines. Whether we intend it or not, we are part of the trench's story now. And if nothing else, perhaps the deepest point on Earth is gently nudging us toward a simple truth. If we can mail our trash to a place no postcard has ever reached, then maybe it is time to rethink what we are sending. For a place so dark, so crushing, and so inhospitable, the Mariana Trench is surprisingly talkative. Not in the way of chatty dolphins or coral whales. Those belong to shallower sunlit oceans with richer social lives. No, the trench speaks in strange tones, booms that seem to come from nowhere, hums that vibrate through instruments like an underwater migraine, and distant wails that drift through the abyss as if the ocean were occasionally practicing its impression of a haunted hallway. These sounds, recorded by hydrophones lowered into the Hadal depths, have become one of the most intriguing puzzles for ocean scientists. If you lowered a microphone into the ocean expecting silence, you would be disappointed. Water is an excellent conductor of sound, much better than air, so noises travel far and wide, weaving through currents and bouncing off geological structures like audio pinballs. In the deep trenches, sound becomes even stranger. The pressure alters how vibrations propagate, bending and stretching them into eerie shapes. Hydrophones placed in the Challenger Deep do not simply pick up whispers from nearby creatures. They become receivers for a whole planet's worth of sonic oddities. Some of the first recordings taken from the trench startled researchers. Among the catalog were sharp metallic booms, low-frequency hums that rose and fell like a slow-motion siren, and strange sweeping calls that sounded uncannily organic. These noises weren't the friendly songs of humpbacks or the chatter of dolphins. They were older, deeper, and far more enigmatic. Hearing them through speakers on a research ship must have felt like eavesdropping on the ocean's private monologue. Many of these sounds fall into the category of biophony, produced by deep living organisms we barely know anything about. Some may come from large squid species or elusive fish that communicate through pressure pulses instead of vocal cords. Others may be caused by the sudden collapse of gas pockets or by the movement of gelatinous animals whose bodies flex and contract in ways that create vibrations too faint for shallow water microphones to detect. The ocean is a noisy place, and even in the trenches, life finds ways to announce itself, quietly, cryptically, but persistently. Yet biology tells only part of the story. Geophony, the sound of the earth itself, is a major contributor to the trench's spooky soundtrack. Subduction zones are geologically active, constantly shifting as tectonic plates grind, slide, sink, and deform under extraordinary stresses. Each shift, however tiny, produces acoustic waves. Some are abrupt, like miniature earthquakes muffled by kilometers of seawater. Others rumble continuously, creating a background hum that researchers describe as a deep, resonant drone. It is not unlike the sound a giant refrigerator might make if it decided to hum existentially for several thousand years. One particularly famous sound recorded near the Mariana region is known as the Western Pacific biotwang. This unusual call rises and falls in frequency, lasting several seconds, and resembles an alien transmission or an electronic glitch. At first, scientists had no idea what was making it. Theories ranged from unknown marine mammals to geological events to some new kind of deep-sea instrument failure. Eventually, researchers concluded that the sound likely came from a baleen whale species, possibly a minke. But the exact purpose of the call remains unclear. Perhaps it is a mating song, perhaps it is a navigation cue, or perhaps, as some scientists like to joke, it is the whale equivalent of shouting, "Hello? Is anyone out there?" into the void. Another sound, known as the upsweep, has puzzled researchers for decades. It appears seasonally, crescendos into sweeping tones, and then fades again. Its source is still unknown, though volcanic activity is a leading suspect. The sound may be produced when seawater interacts with hot, chemically reactive rock beneath the surface. Imagine a colossal underwater kettle whistling every time tectonic forces heat the water just right. Even more mysterious are the isolated booms, short, sharp, thunder-like claps recorded at depths where lightning is impossible and explosions improbable. These may be caused by sudden rock fractures or the collapse of sediment layers under pressure. The ocean floor, especially near a trench, is constantly adjusting. A slight shift in the subducting plate could send a shock wave echoing upward like a pulse through the water column. Then there are the hums. Long, steady, and unnervingly even, these sounds sometimes persist for minutes or even hours. Some match the frequencies produced by distant storms. The ocean, after all, is excellent at carrying noise from faraway weather. Others may be induced by internal waves, massive, slow-moving waves that occur not on the surface, but deep within layers of different water densities. These internal waves can be enormous, larger than anything seen at the surface, and their movements create vibrations that slip into hydrophones like the distant murmurs of a restless world. Listening to these recordings, scientists often experience a strange sense of eerie familiarity. The tones feel ancient, almost mythic, as if they were echoes from the earliest days of the planet. In the crushing depths where light has never entered, sound becomes the primary language of nature, one we are only beginning to decipher. Each hum, boom, sweep, and twang is a message from forces we cannot see, delivered through an environment where vision is useless and pressure rules everything. Yet despite their unnerving qualities, these sounds are invaluable to researchers. They help map geological activity, track the movement of species, and reveal environmental changes long before they appear in physical samples. Sound is a surveillance system for a hidden world, offering clues to its behavior and mood. But let's be honest, no matter how scientific the explanation, some of these recordings sound like the ocean is auditioning for a role in a ghost story. Deep, echoing moans, abrupt, clattering noises, rhythmic pulses that feel like a heartbeat too large to belong to anything friendly. If the ocean were ever to open a haunted house attraction, the Mariana Trench recordings would be the background soundtrack. Ultimately, the mystery of Hadal Zone acoustics underscores a truth that threads through every chapter of deep-sea exploration. The ocean still holds secrets. It speaks, but in riddles. It whispers, but in tones we're still learning to decode. And sometimes, just sometimes, it rattles our hydrophones with a dramatic boom simply because it can. In a realm of silence, sound becomes the storyteller. And the trench, it turns out, has quite a lot to say. If the Mariana Trench were a gallery, the creatures would be its moving exhibits, but the geology would be its permanent installation, ancient, brooding, and sculpted by forces that do not care about human timelines. Down at the trench floor, where nearly 11 kilometers of water press downward with relentless force, the landscape is not a simple muddy pit. It is a shifting mosaic of ridges, slopes, scarps, and bizarre mineral formations that hint at the violent, slow-motion drama unfolding beneath the crust. Among the strangest of these features are serpentinite mud volcanoes, structures so peculiar that even the rocks down here seem to have unresolved emotional pressure. Serpentinite mud volcanoes are not volcanoes in the fiery, molten sense. They are more like geological pressure valves, slowly releasing slurries of mineral-rich fluids and ultra-fine mud from deep within Earth's mantle-warmed basement. The word serpentinite refers to a group of minerals formed when seawater infiltrates hot, mantle-derived rocks, triggering a chemical makeover that produces serpentine minerals, hydrogen gas, and a rich cocktail of altered materials. This reaction happens far below the surface, in spaces where temperatures climb and rocks undergo transformations that would make any metamorphosis enthusiast proud. As tectonic plates grind against one another at subduction zones, deep rock layers get fractured, folded, and stressed. Water infiltrates these cracks, reacts with ultramafic rock, and generates fluids that become buoyant, rising toward the surface in slow, unstoppable streams. When these fluids reach weaknesses in the overlying crust, they seep upward, dragging with them mud and minerals that eventually extrude through the sea floor. Over time, these extrusions build towering mounds, some reaching thousands of meters tall. From afar, although afar is relative when you're in a trench so deep that everything is technically right next to nothing, these serpentinite mud volcanoes resemble giant conical hills or irregular domes. Their slopes are coated in fine mud that behaves almost like wet cement, slowly creeping under the influence of gravity and pressure. But get close enough with a robotic camera, and the structures reveal intricate textures, rippling mud flows, mineral crusts, and vents that ooze warm alkaline fluids. These are not the dramatic lava fountains we associate with volcanism. They are quiet, patient, and unnervingly self-assured. One of the most famous examples in the region is the South Chamorro Seamount, a massive mud volcano rising 7 kilometers above the surrounding trench floor. This structure is a geological time capsule, carrying material from deep within the subduction zone to the ocean bottom. The mud is cold compared to magma, but warm compared to the frigid trench waters, creating subtle thermal gradients that support unusual microbial life. These microbes thrive in environments rich in hydrogen and methane, chemicals produced during serpentinization, and their metabolic processes leave chemical fingerprints that scientists can read like coded messages from the Earth's interior. What makes serpentinite mud volcanoes especially fascinating is their ability to expose rocks from depths humanity could never dig to. The materials they expel originate tens of kilometers below the seafloor, in zones where pressure and temperature distort minerals into new forms. This means that studying the mud volcanoes is like receiving unsolicited geological mail from the planet's underlayers, a delivery service run entirely by tectonic stress. Some of the expelled materials include brucite, carbonates, serpentine minerals, and altered basalt fragments. These substances help scientists reconstruct what's happening far beneath the surface, revealing clues about hydration processes, mantle chemistry, and the behavior of the sinking Pacific plate. In many ways, serpentinite mud volcanoes are the closest thing Earth offers to an unplanned, naturally occurring basement renovation. The crust cracks, the mantle reacts, pressure builds, and eventually materials get pushed upward until the seafloor grudgingly agrees to let them out. But the trench floor houses more than mud volcanoes. It hosts sharp fault scarps, cliffs formed when tectonic blocks shift vertically, and fissures where sediments have been stretched or compressed so severely they fracture like cracked pottery. The slopes are often unstable, prone to slow landslides that distribute sediment in chaotic patterns. Every inch of terrain reflects epochs of tectonic tension, erosion, and collapse. In some areas, the sediment appears sculpted into ripples, shaped by bottom currents that glide through the abyss like invisible rivers. In others, the ground is surprisingly smooth, a quiet plain of fine particles that descended from the upper ocean over thousands of years. This blanket of sediment hides jagged bedrock beneath, creating the illusion of tranquility over a structure that never stops shifting. One of the trench's most dramatic structures is the deep inner wall, where the Pacific plate bends steeply downward as it disappears under the Philippine plate. This descent creates an arc-shaped expanse of fractured rock and vertical cliffs that stretch for dozens of kilometers. If you scaled the trench barehanded, and assuming you miraculously survived the pressure, your arms would give out long before the geological features did. The walls, shaped by relentless bending and faulting, are reminders that even the most solid rocks have a breaking point. Taken together, the trench's geology paints a picture of a world constantly under strain. Down here, the Earth's crust is negotiating with gravity, temperature, and chemistry, trying its best to maintain structural dignity while two tectonic plates shove it around like continents engaged in a slow but intense argument. No wonder the rocks appear to have unresolved emotional pressure. They are under literal emotional pressure, being kneaded, squeezed, and reshaped in ways that would send any terrestrial landscape into counseling. Yet beneath the humor lies a profound truth. The Mariana Trench is not just deep, it is dynamic. It is alive in a geological sense, pulsing with forces that shape the entire Pacific region. Its floor is a living laboratory where the planet reveals both its violence and its creativity, sculpting formations unlike anything seen on land. And as robotic explorers continue mapping its contours, sample by sample, image by image, humanity gains a clearer view of a landscape that transcends imagination. Far from a monotonous abyss, the trench floor is a masterpiece of Earth's inner workings, a place where chemistry, physics, and tectonics converge under conditions so extreme that even the rocks have stories to tell. When you step back and take in everything the Mariana Trench has revealed, from snailfish that look like translucent whispers to mud volcanoes exhaling warm chemistry, from giant amphipods to microscopic chemists rewriting the rules of survival, you start to see a picture forming. It is not a picture of an isolated alien world hiding at the bottom of the ocean. It is a picture of our world, expanded. These discoveries aren't just curiosities. They reshape our understanding of Earth's biosphere, turning the deep sea into something like the universe's beta testing ground for weird life. The trenches are where nature throws out the rule book, laughs, and begins drafting something new. For most of history, humans believed life was delicate, fragile, dependent on narrow ranges of temperature, pressure, and sunlight. But the deeper we look, the more that idea crumbles. The deep sea has shown us organisms thriving in conditions that seem straight out of cosmic science fiction. Pressure that could compress steel, temperatures near freezing or boiling depending on the vent, and chemical cocktails potent enough to make ordinary life forms faint politely. These ecosystems, hidden for millennia, prove that Earth's biosphere is not a thin shell of sunlight and warmth. It is a vast, layered, adaptable entity that stretches from mountaintops to the darkest geological scars. Take the trench-dwelling microbes, for instance. These extremophiles broaden the definition of life's comfort zone, surviving on chemical gradients instead of sunlight, metabolizing hydrogen or methane with a kind of scrappy determination. Their success implies that life does not require a familiar environment to take root. Life requires opportunity. Give it chemistry, give it energy, give it time, and it will try its hardest to bloom, even if no one is watching. Their resilience forces biologists to reconsider what makes a planet habitable. If Earth can support thriving communities at pressures thousands of times greater than surface air, then habitability cannot just mean blue skies and warm breezes. It must also include deep oceans, hidden layers, and environments that never see the sun. Then there are the animals, creatures whose bodies defy expectation. Snailfish with jelly-like skeletons demonstrate that softness can be a winning evolutionary strategy in a world of crushing force. Amphipods, pumped up to dramatic sizes, reveal that harsh environments can produce gigantism instead of shrinking. These discoveries nudge evolutionary biology in new directions, highlighting pathways that once seemed implausible. Life evolves not just for comfort, but for whatever niche it finds available, even if that niche is 11 kilometers deep, utterly dark, and waiting with a pressure more intense than anything at the surface. The geological findings are equally transformative. The mud volcanoes and mineral chimneys near trench systems showcase interactions between rock, water, and chemistry that generate entire microcosms of life. They hint that our planet's interior is not simply a passive heat source, but an active partner in biology. The boundary between geology and biology becomes blurry. Rocks release chemicals, microbes harness them, animals cluster around them, and ecosystems blossom where none should logically exist. The deep sea shows us that Earth's biosphere is not separate from its geology. It is intertwined like threads in a single tapestry. This interconnectedness forces a rethinking of our place in the biosphere. Humans typically imagine themselves at the center of Earth's ecological story, scribbling notes from the comfort of dry land. But the trench reveals a narrative far older, far stranger, and far more patient than our own. Life existed in the deep long before humans appeared, and it will continue adapting long after our species leaves its final footprints. The trench is like the basement workshop of the planet, where evolution quietly experiments with prototypes, many that never appear in the shallows, but some whose principles eventually influence the entire tree of life. The discoveries also expand our understanding of how interconnected the planet truly is. Pollution reaching the trench floor reveals that surface actions echo downward into the deepest spaces. Currents carry nutrients, chemicals, and debris into hadal systems, linking everything from coastal ecosystems to mid-ocean gyres to the abyss. Earth's biosphere is a single breathing entity connected by water and chemical cycles that ignore human boundaries. In studying the trench, scientists are also learning how life might respond to extreme planetary changes. What happens if oceans warm? If chemistry shifts? If tectonics alter deep water circulation? The creatures of the trench offer insights into resilience, how life adapts to scarcity, to pressure, to upheaval. They show us not only how fragile ecosystems can be, but also how resourceful and inventive life becomes when pushed into a corner. And then, of course, there is the big implication, the one that tingles the back of the imagination. If Earth can hide such creative, bizarre, and robust life in its deepest shadows, what might the universe be hiding? The trench becomes a proxy, a reference point. If life thrives without light, in extreme pressure, fueled by chemical energy, then ocean worlds across the solar system suddenly seem more plausible as hosts for biology. The deep sea is our training ground for thinking beyond Earth, a living demonstration of what life can endure. So as we gather more data from the trench, more samples, more images, more sounds, we are not merely cataloging strange creatures and odd rocks. We are expanding the boundaries of biology itself. Each discovery whispers that life is not timid. It is adventurous. It does not wait for ideal circumstances. It pushes into every available crevice, testing the limits of physics and chemistry like a curious traveler. The deep sea might be Earth's most dramatic laboratory, a place where evolution runs experimental builds and beta tests new forms. But it is also a reminder that the biosphere is far larger, far richer, and far more inventive than we once imagined. And somewhere below the crushing pressure and eternal dark, life keeps tinkering, quietly shaping the story of a planet that is still very much alive. The deeper we push into the Mariana Trench, the more Earth begins to resemble a place that might easily pass for an extraterrestrial world. If a cosmic filmmaker were scouting locations for a documentary about strange alien oceans, the trench would be an ideal set, an environment so extreme, so inventive, and so full of unlikely life forms that it feels like Earth auditioning for the role of alien planet in the next cosmic documentary. And this is not just poetic imagery. The Hadal depths offer real scientific insight into what life might look like on other worlds, particularly the ice-covered moons Europa and Enceladus, whose hidden oceans could be brimming with possibilities. These moons orbit worlds far colder and darker than Earth. Europa circles Jupiter, Enceladus circles Saturn, and both hide global oceans beneath thick shells of ice. For decades, these oceans were theoretical curiosities, interesting perhaps, but not immediately linked to biology. Then deep-sea research on Earth began revealing organisms that thrive in conditions once thought impossible. Creatures living without sunlight, microbes feeding on chemical gradients, ecosystems built around hydrothermal vents that resemble underwater furnaces. Suddenly, the question shifted from, could life exist on these moons, to why wouldn't it? Europa and Enceladus are believed to host environments where rock meets water, subsurface interfaces warmed by tidal flexing and internal heat. These rock-water boundaries may host hydrothermal activity, and on Earth, hydrothermal systems are some of the richest sources of chemosynthetic energy on the planet. At depths where no sunlight ever reaches, vents produce heat, minerals, and chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide or methane. Microbes convert these molecules into energy, forming the foundation for entire ecosystems. The trenches show us it is not the absence of light that matters, it is the presence of chemistry. When robotic landers captured footage of amphipods crowding around makeshift bait and snailfish fluttering gracefully in the Hadal gloom, planetary scientists were taking notes. If life can adapt to pressures over 1,000 atmospheres, then extraterrestrial oceans, even those under kilometers of ice, do not seem far-fetched. In fact, the physics suggests Europa's ocean pressure, while enormous, may fall within the same ballpark as Earth's deepest trenches. It is an odd comfort to realize that our own planet already runs a crash course in surviving such intimidating pressures. Even more compelling are the extremophile microbes discovered lurking in trench sediments. These organisms thrive without sunlight, without warmth, and without the stable conditions we associate with comfortable living. Their metabolisms rely on chemical energy derived from rock-water reactions, precisely the sort of chemistry hypothesized to exist within Europa's seafloor. The reactions that form serpentinite mud volcanoes on Earth also produce hydrogen, a crucial potential fuel for extraterrestrial microbes. If life had a checklist for surviving on Europa or Enceladus, deep-sea microbes would tick nearly every box. Then there is the tantalizing plume data from Enceladus. Saturn's icy moon periodically vents water vapor, organic molecules, and salts into space through cracks in its icy crust. These plumes suggest that the ocean below is interacting with minerals at the sea floor. When scientists analyzed the particles in the plumes, they found compounds that mirrored those present near Earth's deep-sea hydrothermal systems. It's as if Enceladus were sending its own geological postcards, hinting at vents, heat, and chemical potential, a trifecta that screams habitable environment. Europa, meanwhile, shows tectonic-like patterns on its ice shell, suggesting internal circulation and heating. The ice itself may be tens of kilometers thick, but beneath that shell lies an ocean that could be deeper than any found on Earth. If hydrothermal vents exist on Europa's seafloor, and many researchers believe they do, then biology could be flourishing in a realm no sunlight has ever touched. Studying deep trenches offers a rare chance to simulate what such ecosystems might look like. The deep sea also teaches us that life can be subtle. It may not scream for attention, glow brightly, or produce large, showy creatures. It might be microbial, modest, and quietly industrious, like the trench bacteria processing chemical gradients in the silence of the Hadal Plains. When astrobiologists imagine what alien life might resemble, they now picture not tentacled monsters, but mats of microbes clinging to vent chimneys, drifting particles feeding unseen networks, and small scavengers eking out survival in nutrient-limited darkness. Even the geological formations of the trench, fractured surfaces, fault lines, mud volcanoes, mirror processes that could occur on icy moons. While Europa and Enceladus do not have plate tectonics like Earth, they do have tidal stresses far stronger than anything our planet experiences. These stresses may crack their crusts, generate heat, circulate ocean water, and drive chemical exchanges. The trench provides a terrestrial analog, a model for how deep, dark environments can transform into dynamic laboratories for geochemistry and biology. Perhaps most importantly, trench research reminds us that our definitions of habitability must always remain flexible. Life, as it turns out, is a shapeshifter. It appears where we least expect it. It adapts, improvises, and survives in forms that challenge our assumptions. If the planet's deepest point, a place once believed lifeless, can host thriving ecosystems, then it becomes much easier to imagine life surviving beyond Earth. When scientists study the trenches, they are not just cataloging creatures or sampling mud. They are practicing a form of cosmic empathy, learning to imagine how life elsewhere might think, feed, grow, or endure. The trench gives us a vocabulary for imagining alien ecosystems. It gives us evidence that life does not require Earth-like comfort zones. It gives us permission to hope that we are not alone. And so, as Earth quietly auditions for the role of alien planet, its trenches show us what the universe might look like when chemistry and pressure get creative. The deep sea becomes a bridge, a connection between what we know and what we dream about, a reminder that even the strangest corners of our planet may hold echoes of worlds we have yet to explore. Standing back from the long journey into the Mariana Trench, stretching from its crushing pressure to its whispering soundscape, from shimmering vents to jelly-soft snailfish, you begin to realize that the deepest place on Earth is less of a destination and more of a lesson. Every discovery, every strange creature, every geological reveal is a quiet reminder that our planet is far stranger, more inventive, and more generous with surprises than we ever imagined. The trench does not simply sit at the bottom of the ocean like a passive hole carved by plate tectonics. It breathes, shifts, murmurs, glows, hides, reveals, and occasionally tosses a new mystery our way just to see how fast scientists can scramble for a notebook. Think of the trench as Earth's final exam for anyone who believes they understand the natural world. You think you know how life works? Meet the snailfish, a creature so gelatinous it defies all the rules you learned in biology class. You think you understand how ecosystems function? Here are extremophile microbes living in chemical conditions that would make standard organisms send out resignation letters. You think geology is slow and predictable? Try watching serpentinite mud volcanoes exhale warm, mineral-rich fluids into the chilly deep, like geological geysers dreaming beneath 10,000 meters of water. Each chapter of the trench story rewrites a little piece of what we thought was settled science, reminding us that the biosphere is not a static diagram, but a restless, sprawling epic. Even the unsettling discoveries, the plastic, the pollutants, carry lessons. They show us that our imprint on the planet runs deeper than we intend. The trench floor quietly holds pieces of our world that should never have reached it. It is a mirror, reflecting back a version of humanity we often forget to look at. Yet the melancholy of that reflection is balanced by hope. If we can reach our influence this far downward, we can also reach our stewardship just as deep. The same curiosity that drives scientists to descend into darkness can drive us to repair and protect what we discover there. And then there are the sounds, the spectral hums, booms, and mysterious sweeps echoing through the abyss. They demonstrate that even when the deep sea looks silent, it is seldom quiet. Pressure cracks rock. Creatures whisper with vibrations. Distant storms murmur across entire ocean basins. The trench has a voice, though it speaks in riddles, and listening to it forces us to adjust our imagination to frequencies we rarely consider. All of this folds into a single, sweeping realization. The trench is not separate from the rest of Earth. It is not a disconnected pit or an alien indentation. It is woven into the planet's circulatory system, geological, chemical, biological. The deep sea shapes the ocean above it, cycles nutrients through the waters, and hosts life forms that influence chemistry across the globe. By studying the trench, we do not simply learn about what lives or moves down there. We learn about the entire planet. The deep sea is the underside of the biosphere's tapestry, full of knots and tension and structure that hold the whole picture together. But perhaps the most profound takeaway is how these discoveries reshape our sense of possibility. The trench teaches us that life thrives under pressure, not metaphorically, though that is sometimes true for humans too, but literally. It reveals that organisms can grow large where food is scarce, that soft bodies can succeed where hard shells fail, that chemistry can fuel ecosystems without a single ray of sunlight. It humbles us by proving that Earth still contains frontiers we have barely begun to map. And this humility is strangely uplifting, because if life can find a foothold in the deepest, coldest, most pressurized corner of our planet, then imagination becomes easier. Curiosity feels lighter. Possibility expands outward into other oceans, other planets, other worlds. The trench shows us that the universe does not need to follow our expectations to be alive. That realization fuels dreams that reach far beyond Earth. Yet with all these scientific revolutions, the trench also offers something gentler: perspective. It shows us that there are places on Earth where time stretches differently, where evolution moves at its own pace, where ecosystems operate without any concern for our existence. In a world often full of noise and speed, the deep sea remains a silent archive of patience. Everything happens slowly there. Sediment settles grain by grain. Snailfish drift with quiet intention. Microbes divide at leisurely intervals. The trench encourages us to slow down, to appreciate the long arcs of change that shape life. But it also invites us to laugh, because the deep sea is undeniably full of oddities. Amphipods built like tiny gym champions. Mud volcanoes that burble like geological soup kettles. Microbes thriving in conditions that would make most organisms file immediate complaints. Even the trench's darkest reaches have a sense of humor, though it is the deadpan kind, the sort delivered with a straight face and 11 kilometers of pressure. So now, at the end of this journey, one truth rises to the surface. The Mariana Trench is a story about curiosity, about humans daring to look where light does not go, about machines descending into blackness with cameras wide open, about scientists uncovering truths that reshape entire fields of study, about the simple, stubborn refusal to accept that unknown means unreachable. And that's why the trench still captures us. Because even though everything else sinks down there, light, heat, matter, debris, logic, curiosity floats. It floats above pressure. It floats above fear. It floats across oceans and decades and disciplines, carrying us deeper into the world we thought we already understood. the deepest place on Earth has never stopped challenging us. But more importantly, it has never stopped inspiring us.